Hi, welcome to Seed, Soil, and Sun Season 2. On Episode 1, we learn how to make a potting soil mix that's perfect for growing cannabis. This episode is sponsored by theweedbox.net, a top-quality, leading brands cannabis accessories box with no commitment required. Save money with the code RuffHouse and stay to the end of the video to see what came in their newest boxes. It's the middle of winter right now, and there's really not that much you can do when it comes to growing cannabis. Or is there? One thing you could be doing right now is to make sure that you're feeding your compost pile and turning it and aerating it to make sure that it's going to compost properly. And also you could take this time to improve your soil mix. And that's what we're going to do today. What we're doing today is we're making a soil mix, and we're going to try to do something kind of copycatting like Happy Frog or Fox Farm with some of the popular soils out there. Now, we're going to be using a lot of ingredients today, but don't go out and buy them just now. Just watch the whole video and then determine which ones, if any, you think you might need to purchase for yourself. But we're going to be using topsoil that we harvest ourselves, some organic compost. We're going to use perlite, which we'll talk more about, organic peat moss, earthworm castings, mushroom compost. We're going to be using organic manure and humus, some black guano, but we couldn't find that, so we're going to be using chicken manure and blood meal. And we'll talk about all those items as we go through, but first we're going to gather some topsoil. And for this step, what we want to do is to gather topsoil from our own property or where we're going to be growing at. And all you need for this is a shovel, basically, and a bucket or something to put it in, or a wheelbarrow. And you're just going to go out and dig up some of the topsoil. I'm digging out of a garden area that I'm going to plant up later. So I'm just going to steal a few gallons of the soil right now for that. You see there's a lot of clay in my soil, but there's also a lot of black, rich looking dirt. It doesn't matter. We're going to condition it and make it all great. And also I'm going to be taking some of the compost that I've been composting for a few months now, and some of this is ready to take. So I'm also going to be gathering some of this organic compost that I have made myself on my property. Okay, and the next step is going to be to prepare the soil and compost that I've taken. Now you could use a rake and break up the soil and then manually pull out all the roots and all the big pieces of rocks and clay and stuff that might be in your soil that you don't want. But I do this a lot. I grow a lot of other plants and vegetables other than cannabis. And so what I found it very useful to do is to make a screen to sift my soil. And you see I had this old chest box, and I just took the box and modified the top of it so that it was open in the middle. And then I've stretched out this piece of hardware screen across it, or chicken wire. You can use something like that. Nice and durable. And then I've taken these nails around the edges to nail it down to my board, nice and secure. And that's going to be what I'm going to use to screen my soil. And you'll see the big difference that it makes with the soil that I have now compared to it after it's sifted. And it was really easy to do this. Once I had the device made, I just took soils a little shovelful at a time or a couple of handfuls at a time and just push it through the screen, rubbing it back and forth. And you can see that it lets the soil break up and pass through. It keeps out the rocks, the big pieces of clay, the roots, and a lot of the stuff that I don't want necessarily in my soil. Of course, I could use that, put it back in my compost pile and let that break down. But you can see what it's done to the soil that I dug up, how much different it looks now. It's much finer. It let some little things pass through that I wanted to pick back out in the end, but this was a really great way to sort of speed up and to refine the process of making my topsoil mix. Now, depending on the type of soil that you have at your property, you may or may not need to augment your soil very much, but surely you wouldn't want to plant directly into that without changing anything at all, especially with that much clay in the soil like I have here, or if you have a lot of sand. But we'll get to that in a minute, conditioning the soil. But we're also going to use this screen to screen out some of the compost here. And this will really make a difference in the compost, as you can see as well. And all the stuff that didn't pass through, I just put right back into the compost bin and let that keep composting. But you can see the richness in the black soil, the composted soil that had brought back into this mix here. So really happy with the topsoil that we've harvested. And we're going to get ready now to move on to making our topsoil mix, or our potting mix. And now I'm going to be using peat moss, and if you're using peat moss, which I recommend, you probably want to wet that first, because one of the peat moss's primary objectives is to bring in whole moisture to your topsoil mix. And so if you wet it before you take it out of the bag, it will be easier to keep wet from then on. So I highly recommend that, putting the hose right in the bag and letting it soak it in there before you open it. Just let it soak for a couple of hours once it's full in the bag. Okay, and then we're going to be using a big bin. I've cleaned out my bin that I'm going to mix and also store my soil in. And just for reference, to keep my proportions right, I'm using a gallon jug, which you see me now gathering up all the topsoil. I had 3 gallons of topsoil. So this is the proportions that I'm going to go through with you here. I used 3 gallons of topsoil, and I ended up conditioning that with 3/4 of a gallon of perlite. Now, perlite is like a volcanic or sometimes it's harvested from the ocean, really light material that we'll use to help break up the clay soil and really helps condition the soil. So I highly recommend perlite, and it's in almost all the potting mixes out there. I'm using an equal amount of peat moss to the topsoil, and then I'm adding an equal amount again of all the organic materials. Now I've broken that down into 2/3 a gallon of earthworm, 2/3 of a gallon of mushroom compost, and then 2/3 of a gallon of the manure and humus, which I used earth grow. And then I've broken the last gallon down into a 1/2 gallon of the chicken manure and 1/2 gallon of blood meal. Now I couldn't find the bat guano that might have been in those topsoil mixes, so I'm using the chicken manure and the bone meal to both provide that really heavy nitrogen kind of augment into your soil that you would have gotten if you use bat guano. So if you can find bat guano, you can use that as well. But chicken manure, it's basically the same thing. It's, bird poo, basically. And then blood meal is something that some people may take offense to using because it's definitely blood. But, mushroom compost also probably has blood in it as well when they make that. So that's my mix. You can make the mix any way you want, but that's just what I did to try to equal or to kind of match up to the ingredients that I found when I read the ingredients of the Happy Frog, and also very similar to the Fox Farm. Okay, and now I've just mixed everything up. Probably want to wear a mask when you're doing this, especially the chicken fertilizer. It's it's really dusty. The blood meal, just wear a mask when you're mixing this up. And you can see I'm comparing it right now. On the right-hand side, you see the Happy Frog, and then my mix on the left. The basically only difference is the perlite's cleaner and the Happy Frog because it's dry. But you can see when I pour them together, it's really very, very similar and very close. I might end up adding a little bit more perlite into my mix too to make it match it a little better once it's dried out. And then I'll re-wet it. But that's it. Now you can use it just like you would any other potting mix. You might want to give it a few days just to kind of settle in before you use it, if you're worried about burning any of your plants or anything, but it's ready to go. And now, as promised, let's check out the weedbox.net's latest boxes. And now you remember you can save money with the code RuffHouse if you check them out at weedbox.net. But you can see this is the type of things that come in their boxes. You get things like this glass blunt, really nice. These desiccant sashes, or actually humidifier sashes. Awesome bong. I love that beaker bong that came in the February box. Banana wraps, whatever that thing was. I really love the weed box. It's one of my favorite cannabis accessory boxes out there. And you don't have to have a commitment or anything. You just buy them one at a time, and it's great. So I really highly recommend the weedbox.net. Top quality stuff. You get a discount with the code RuffHouse, and those guys are really great sponsors of us. So thank you to them. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm planting peppers right now because it's not quite time to start our cannabis crop, but I'll be doing that soon, so make sure you follow us at RuffHouseStudios.com. And this is Matt from RuffHouse. Thank you for watching.